Hey, everybody. We are live here on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And I get to be joined by one of my favorite people in the packaging industry, Camille Corchism. I'm going to have Camille introduce herself here in a second, but just to give a quick update on what we're doing here today on this Friday for LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, Facebook Live streaming, is we're going to be talking about the supply chain crisis. When I say we are talking, I mean everybody, all of you. So first of all, if you can do me a favor, if you are watching this live on any of the platforms, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or on Facebook, can you just go ahead and drop a comment in? Where are you tuning in from? So are you, like, I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, but I'm rocking all my Nuggets gear today. Mile High City. The Denver Nuggets did clinch a playoff spot last night, and Nikola Jokic is the greatest basketball player on the planet right now. So that's exciting for me. Before I was a packaging nerd, I was a Denver Nuggets diehard, and I still am to this day. 1988 is when I fell in love with the Denver Nuggets. So it's been a while. Did you know that, Camille, that I've been a Nuggets fan for that long?
No, I did not. I knew you were big into basketball, but I did not know of your love affair for decades with the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, it runs deep. It's been a struggle. It's been a struggle to be a Nuggets fan, but we got to celebrate our little moments. So welcome everyone. Hey, if you're able to watch this live, please go ahead, and so we know who's here. I don't know if anyone's here or not. This will be recorded as well, and so you can be interacting with this throughout the day on LinkedIn. And I'll be checking in. Camille will be checking in on comments as questions come up. So Camille, why don't you do a quick introduction?
Sure. First of all, Adam, thanks for having me. Adam is the packaging king. He's royalty in the packaging world. Okay, my name is Camille Corchism. I have about 30 years, a little bit over 30 years of industry experience in packaging. Michigan State and RIT packaging. So, shout out to those schools. And I started consulting. I have a consulting firm called Indigo Packaging and Consulting. I have experience in all sorts of areas: food, pharma, sales, a little bit of everything, technology. But I landed in automotive. So I would say right now I'm in Detroit. Most of my business is automotive related. I love every day of it, every minute of it. Everything needs a package, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, everyone needs to, if you haven't already connected up with Camille, you can find her on LinkedIn. There's probably not a whole lot of Camille Corchisms. You are, in my book, you're one of a kind, but I would imagine in the LinkedIn book, you are probably also one of a kind.
Oddly enough, I have an identical twin and identical twin daughter. So apparently I'm very clonish,
Well, are they the same
yes.
name though?
No. I'm definitely the only Camille Corchism.
There it is. I also have identical twin sisters. Did you know that?
I do remember you saying that.
Okay.
And tell them it does not skip a
generation. I'll let them know. I have one sister who has 4 kids and no identical twins. So
not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. All right. Well, Lisa and Kristen, if you ever watch or listen to this, then pay attention. Apparently, identical twins did not skip a generation with Camille. So, hey, let's get into the topic that we want to discuss. And like I said, if you are able to tune in live, please just let us know where you're tuning in from. City, state, country, wherever it might be. If you're watching this on recording, or if you're listening to it, you can still comment on the video on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and we'll try to jump in and say what's up and answer some comments. So this isn't your only shot to interact with us here. So listen, Camille, I'm sure that you have felt this also. The impact on the packaging industry from the supply chain crisis is, I would say, it's very, very real. It is a massive problem. It's causing a lot of big problems, and those problems are not going to be wished away for sure. So a couple of statistics that are true as of today, which is April 8th, 2022. If you're listening to this in the future, that's the timestamp. But a couple of numbers. So, just think about like in inflation, right? We're experiencing in the U.S. and probably likely around the world this rapid rise in inflation. The consumer price index is up like 7.5% on food and energy, which means it's costing us more money to live and power our homes, and it's costing us more money to live and power our bodies and our kids. And there's a lot of real price pressure on lower middle class American families, and it's typically those people who are working in the jobs that really drive America. So in my industry, it's press operators and rewinders and people who work in shipping and they do this incredible work. I mean, to run a flexo press is hard. It's really difficult,
Yes.
and there's a labor shortage. People are being asked to do way more with way less. It started with COVID, and now with the war in Ukraine and the global pressure that that's creating, along with tariffs that have happened with international trade. It's this, I'd call it an unprecedented time, at least in my career. I know you said you've been in the business for over 30 years. I'm over 15. The pulp and paper index, if you haven't received price increases on folding cartons, on hey, what's up, Mohammed from Detroit, Michigan? Thanks for
Hey, shout out to Detroit. Hi, Mohammed.
shout out to Detroit. Thanks for tuning in, Mohammed. Appreciate you coming on. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in here, and we'll try to address them as we go. So, pulp and paper is up like 35% year over year. Polypropylene has been fairly steady, but even that's up 15%. The cost of aluminum is like 78% growth. You've got Ball raised their minimum order quantities to 5 truckloads for cans. I could just keep going on and on. There's a mill strike in Finland that's causing label materials to, I mean, when I say like not just like, oh, the lead time's long, I mean like semi-gloss paper labels and paper liner are in danger of not being available in a few months. Like,
Yeah.
not like, oh, you're behind the line, you're behind some big company. Literally, they will not be able to be purchased. Like, and that's
That's
one of the most common PS labels. So it's crazy, Camille.
It's very sobering. I mean, because you think of everything that uses labels, and we've dealt with what we thought were shortages, and even last year, I was hearing rumblings that things were going to get worse. That this domino effect was really snowballing,
Hmm.
and now it's like we've hit this apex. And I agree, this is unprecedented. I've never seen anything like this. I can't find anything like this in packaging history. It's really sobering, and I think last year my friends and family thought I was just being one of those prepper people, but now they're kind of like, so what was that
They're
you
like,
said again?
hey, Camille, you got, remember that stuff you were stocking up on?
Yes,
Can we
yes.
can we give someone? Hey, shout out to Dustin tuning in here. Good morning from Minneapolis. Hey, and a
Another
Lansing.
Michigan native. Hey, welcome, another
And look at that
Michigander.
connection. So Dustin's in Minneapolis, Myers. Um, can't see or hear, Corey says. That's interesting. Can anyone not see or hear us? That's super weird. Um, sorry, Corey, but Dustin can. So shout out to Dustin. Anyone else having this problem? Can't see or hear. Uh, hope most people can. Corey says, have a great show. Let me see. Let me see what's going on here real quick. I'm gonna try to tune in just here on my phone and see what's going on.
So who can hear us? If you can hear us, give us a thumbs up or wave or something so we can get an idea.
Huh. Yeah, it looks like it was up, and I'm just getting the spinning wheel of death on my mobile phone.
We must have said something that we should have said. I don't know. Maybe when I talked about being a prepper, I don't know.
Oh yeah, looks like we got a dark screen. Can't see, but we can hear for now. That's crazy. I wonder what's going on with that.
Welcome
Can't
to
see the show,
technology.
audio but no visual. Well, hey, welcome to your live audio podcast. I'm your host, Adam Peak, with Camille Gorgeous.
Hi.
Oh man, y'all. Uh, Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. We're just gonna keep going through. Maybe the
Amen.
audio will come back on. It was on in the beginning, so that's kind of strange. And I'm curious if it's on other platforms, but I don't really feel like checking that right now. I just want to keep going here because we've got a limited. We've got about 10, 15 more minutes. So hey, if you got questions, Cole Hamilton, appreciate you jumping on. Kelly, thanks for letting us know that you can hear, but you can't see us. I don't know what's up. It's technology, but you can hear us, and so we will rejoice in that.
Yes.
Oh, we got someone tuning in from Turkey. Good evening from Turkey. Thank you so
Good
much.
evening.
Anyway, before we had this weird technical glitch with the audio or the video, we were just kind of talking about this unprecedented impact, and it's led to this weird time where suppliers are sort of carrying a lot of the power. And we're able to go, if we want to be jerks about it, we can go to those companies who were just you know jerks to us and say, like, hey, deal with it. uh Here's your price increase, take it or leave it. Do you want to be on our presses? If you want to do this, then like that's on you. I think it's a really bad strategy, but
I don't see that many people doing that. I see people saying we could, but we really don't want to because they understand that this is not a normal situation. And what I'm seeing, most people don't want to take advantage of people because they know in the end, when this all works out at some point, whenever it does,
yeah.
that they'll have to come back to those suppliers. The companies, I should say, the people that make it through this, the companies that make it through this will be, I think they'll be strong players.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Um, and I just apologize here in the comments. I don't know why the screen isn't working, but totally agree with you, Camille, that if you are if you're a salesperson, that's been your take, like that's a really bad take. And you can't, just because you can do, my dad used to always tell me, all things are permissible, not all things are beneficial. And I would say that is not a beneficial thing. So
I love
um
that.
it's actually from the Bible, believe it or not,
Mhm.
from the book of First Corinthians. So, I think that there are I guess, Camille, from the automotive sector, because that is a really it's such a massive part of our country's infrastructure, right? I mean, not just the creation of automobiles, but the entire supply chain that goes into that. Um, as you are working with a lot of automotive suppliers in the Detroit area, what are you hearing about their struggles when it comes to packaging specifically, as these, inflationary pressures, labor shortages, material price increases, material availability, material allocation, all of that is hit at the same time? What are you seeing with that?
So, what's interesting, I think one of the great things about automotive is that people in automotive have this can-do attitude. So when something goes wrong, they always have a plan B, plan C, plan D. So they probably have plan E right about now. They've seen some really crazy things like the truck convoy, for example, and how quickly that shut down the Ambassador Bridge. And when I was growing up, the big three, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, they were the big three because they were the biggest companies in the world. So even though other companies have outpaced them from a standpoint of what they ship, hard goods, they're still huge. So they keep it pretty close to the vest when things are shutting down. But I can only imagine that you're seeing, there's got to be contingency planning right now for labels because with the returnables, they use a lot of quick release labels. So the labels get thrown away after every turn and they put a new label on to identify the parts. So the labor shortage is an impact. But then when you add the labels into that with the strike, that is, it's everyone's has to be looking at how are they going to get around that. So I know that you know, people are saying, hey, you know, instead of using paper backing for your labels, you know, use plastic. So I know we're seeing more of that, even though that goes backwards when you talk about sustainability. But, you know, people will, in automotive, they will do what they need to do to make sure that the vehicles get to their customers.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
And it sounds like, Camille, that the audio's gone out now too. So there must be some sort of connection issue, but that's fine. We'll just keep going, and then I'll post this up there
Okay.
as its own content that
Okay.
people can kind of watch as they go. So yeah, I mean, and with this, with a lot of these sustainability goals, um, are you? Oh, we do have a question, so maybe some people can still hear us. So, with a lot of these sustainability goals, you know, around electricity and electrifying our grid, and how are automotive companies both innovating and pivoting, um, and but also and then how is the packaging sort of having to adapt and catch up? Is that an area that you have really had to play in?
I've seen a little bit more scrutiny over the use of returnables. So returnable packaging has been used, you know, as a standard since the 80s in automotive. And that was the go-to. You, even though you do a justification, you're going to assume that with certain parts you're going to use returnables. But I'm seeing reviews of packaging to say, should we use returnable or the throwaway expendable packaging, which makes more sense, not just because of the shortage of material or the cost of material, but also with the cost of fuel. That's actually causing people to relook at it, because you return those containers back. Now you're returning packaging back that's empty. So you're basically sending an empty truck back. So, you know, do they want to actually carry the burden of that cost for those truck routes? So that goes into the cost of packaging. It ties into the whole supply chain. So
Mm,
I think they're scrutinizing it more, from the beginning to the end, the entire life cycle. That's what I'm seeing.
got it. Um, And, it has, because I know, like, you know, GM and Ford have all really pivoted, you know, pretty hard. I just see more and more of these EV vehicles coming out. Is returnable packaging still kind of an issue with that as well?
So they definitely are looking at returnable packaging, and the returnable packaging suppliers are planning to supply for them. Um, However, I would say they're not at full ramp, and I think that the fuel costs are pushing people to look at EVs. So we're going to see a push, but you know, the whole schedule for automotive, you know, they tend to launch new vehicles in the summer. So there's usually going to be a lag. So
Yeah,
I think we're probably going to start seeing more EVs in the next year, 2 years, and so on going into the future. So I think short term, we're not going to necessarily see a big impact
yeah,
with the returnables for EV, but you know, I think they're hoping that we can recover from all of these supply chain, labor, packaging,
right.
material shortages and increases when they are ready to fully ramp up.
And I guess that makes sense, you know, because it does take a while, obviously, to produce cars, and so the cars that are coming out now have been in production for a, you know, for a while, and so the material shortages, specifically for automotive, and the allocation and the rising costs will likely impact maybe like next year's releases. If, you know, for example, like people don't think about this stuff, but like if you're call it like Johnson Controls, and you're making car batteries, and you can't get the material to put the warning label on your battery, you could make the
Mhm.
entire battery, but you can't sell that thing without that stupid warning label that goes on there. And it's a real problem. Um,
Yes, automotive will put together rework loops, so they'll make everything that they can, and then they'll stage it. And then when they get whatever material they need, whether they, you know, comes by truck or sometimes by helicopter or whatever, they'll do whatever they need to do to get it there. And they'll go to that staging area and have a whole rework process set up so that they already know what they're going to do. So when that material comes in, they can process it as quickly as possible. So that, I think that's what we're seeing more with the, from a short term standpoint, you know, vehicles that are already in production, and allocating materials for them at that moment.
Got it.
It probably impacts, because the manufacturers of the vehicles, the assembly plants, they are more just in time or JIT, and that burden gets pushed onto the tiers. So their suppliers and then their sub suppliers. The further into that stream that you go, the more probably more of a burden and more of a responsibility they have to help the final assembly plant manage
Right.
that packaging.
Okay. Well, hey, we got a few questions and then we'll kind
Okay.
of wrap this up. And once again, I apologize. Everything looks good on our end. Camille and I can see each other. We can see our video. We can hear one another.
Yes.
And so I'll go ahead and post this on LinkedIn as a recorded video, not as a live stream, in case anybody wants to kind of jump in and interact with that. But got a question here from our friend in Detroit, Mohammed. He asks, some of the plastic packaging materials are not recyclable. So I was wondering, why do we use them? Why can't we use the alternatives that are recyclable? Do you want to start with that one? And he actually had a follow-up question: is plastic cheaper than alternatives?
Okay, so we'll answer the second question first, and that's the basis of the answer to the first question. Yes, plastic is cheaper, so thus lies the struggle to switch over at certain times. Um, so it's not that some plastics are more recyclable. It is about what is available as far as facilities to recycle. You see the same thing actually with compostable material. So you have to be able to find a facility that can actually process your packaging, whether it's recyclable or compostable or whatever. And then, even when you find a recycling facility, you probably want to keep in touch with that facility and find out how do they make that determination. Because if they determine from a financial standpoint that it actually is feasible to throw something in the landfill, a load can go in the landfill, so they'll look at it and say, are we getting money's back by recycling it, or does it make more sense financially to landfill it? So you want to probably find out from your municipal waste or your recycling facility, whoever it is, how they make that determination and what their metrics are.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I'll just piggyback off of that. I totally agree that the second question does feed into the first question. Oftentimes, also, Mohammed, the material that's selected. So, for example, flexible packaging is an area that I've worked in before, but I'm certainly not an expert in it. But you're dealing with it's both primary and secondary printed packaging. So that product has to not only it has to protect, or the packaging has to protect that product. So your water vapor barriers, your oxygen transmission rate barriers, like those things need to be taken into consideration, along with printability, appearance, marketing, and branding, all on one package. And so oftentimes that material is not going to be recyclable through a normal stream. There are companies like TerraCycle and Recyclops that you can partner with as a brand in order to find an end use for that. Oftentimes it's just downcycling into building materials, but it's still a way to keep it out of oceans and landfills. But certainly material innovation is something that it not only is needed, but you look at the going back to tying that into the supply chain crunch and sustainability. We honestly, it's really hard to innovate around sustainability right now because we're dealing with labor shortages, because we're dealing with material allocation and rising costs. And I'll tell you this, as a packaging manufacturer, I can't speak for all of them, but when we pass on a material cost, we are honestly saving in that. So money that could come in for innovation and R&D is becoming less and less because packaging companies who typically do a lot of those innovative R&Ds along with brands are losing not only the people, but also the profits to be able to invest in that. Not all the way across the board, right? But for a lot of companies, they have been. It's the really smart people are now focused on, well, how do we change from this label material to that label material, from this liner weight on a box to a different liner weight, because we're trying to, like, it's all a lot of the conversations around that and not around sustainability, similar to the first thing that happened with COVID, which was just how do we get toilet paper on the shelves?
Mhm.
So um,
Very,
that's
very
great.
true. Very true, Adam. And, another thing I always think about is that plastics, they really took off in the 1960s and early 70s because they were designed to be thrown away,
Yep.
So inherently you're dealing with something that was designed to be thrown away. And now you're trying to figure out how to recycle it when it can be recycled,
Right.
but the infrastructure was not put in place early on.
We got a big question here from Dustin, and it's one of my favorites. So he says, "How can we steer away from relying on consumers to do the work?" It's funny how a conversation about supply chain ultimately ends up in talking about sustainability, but it's a great question.
Yes.
With Amazon, they have their packages, which is a recyclable monomaterial um, shipping envelope, or they have paper. So, but is it still recyclable? And are we relying too much on them for innovations? And that's still kind of with Mohammed's question here, that recycling seems like, or a comment that recycling feels like a lost goal. What are your thoughts on that first, Camille?
Okay. I'm trying not to be the packaging cynic, but I think that part of the reason why we are struggling as a nation with recycling is we are expecting the consumers to manage the end use of the packaging without giving them clear education or instructions or making it easy for them. So companies, they want to meet sustainability goals and they'll say, well, like Amazon, it is recyclable. However, we're leaning on our customers to do something with it. And we know that that doesn't always happen.
Hmm.
As a nation, we were sending our material. I think we hit a wall in the early '90s about recycling and how we're going to manage materials, and then the answer was going overseas.
Yep.
And after sending loads and loads of material and including dirty diapers and being warned, please stop sending us the things we cannot recycle for
Yeah.
you.
Medical needles in paperboard
Yes,
packaging. Yeah.
yes, we basically lost our privileges with people that could do that were doing it way more efficiently than we could ever do it, and now we're trying to build an infrastructure that we probably should have built 30,
A
40,
long time
50
ago.
years
Right.
ago. Mm-hmm.
By the way, let's give a quick shout out here to Danny, who's tuning in from
Hi,
China. So
Danny.
we got Turkey, China, Detroit, Minneapolis. It's an international event, even though you
That's
can't
great.
see us and you can't see my glorious smile and my Denver Nuggets hat on.
He's wearing it.
Just because I'm so excited that the Nuggets are in the playoffs. But yeah, and I have to contact StreamYard to figure out what's going on. So, but I totally agree with you that it's it's a hard conundrum, because on the one hand, brands are being hit with a lot of pressures, and there's not like every available material is, we can't ship everything in like an aluminum container that it can be infinitely recycled, because there's not the mining process of aluminum couldn't keep up. So, like we need paper, we need films, we need all of the available materials to accomplish this task of managing the fastest growth in human population that this world has ever seen. In the last 100 years, we've added like 6 billion people. The previous 100 years, it was like 500 million people. So we are all trying to rapidly keep up with this. I'm not saying that's an excuse. It's just the reality of it. Um, and so what's happening is, I think, yeah, maybe it's a little bit unfair to ask consumers to, to take that next step. But on the other hand, it's kind of like, but why not? I mean, and I
We
mean
have
that,
to.
I
We
mean
have
that
to.
it's like everybody has to participate in this. And the brands are a little bit hamstrung with the materials that they can use because of the price problems, because of the availability of material problems, because it has to actually function and protect the product. Um, there's not a monomaterial label and label adhesive and shipping envelope that can be fully easily recycled. There is one that could be industrially composted, but the industrial compost system is not fully built out in the US. You'd have to ship it away in a shipping container to an
Mhm.
industrial composting facility, likely, in order for that thing to be composted. Well, is that any better than just taking off a label, just cutting it off and tossing the label and recycling the bag? So it's not perfect, but it's not it's I don't talk to any brands, and I'm sure you don't either, Camille, who are like, we want to do worse. Like everybody's trying to do better.
Everyone wants to do better. And, I'm an analogy person. You already know that, Adam.
Yeah.
I liken this whole scenario to, because the Masters are going on in Augusta right now, to golf, right?
Tiger Woods, y'all.
That's amazing, right?
It's so
But yeah, when the golfer goes into their bag, they don't use their putting,
mm,
you know, they're not going to use their putter to tee off or anything like that. And
I
they're
tried once. It doesn't go well.
right. So, it's the same thing with packaging. Every material has a different use. I hear people say glass is the best. Well, it's really heavy. So now you're dealing with shipping and breakage. Oh, yeah, Muhammad, yes. The glass can be costly because of the energy it takes to process it. It takes a lot of energy to melt the
Mhm.
material to get, your sand to get it into glass.
It's heavy, and you got to ship it, and
Hmm.
sand comes from the bodies of water, which can disrupt riverbeds, and
Yes.
it's not like the glass has a use, right? But it's not
Mhm.
that's not the best. Glass isn't even curbside recyclable in my area in Salt Lake City. So
Yeah, and see, in Michigan, we've had a mature bottle deposit process for years, and I've heard people that come to Michigan, they're like, "That's not fair. That you have to incentivize people to get them to recycle their material," but it works. People
mhm.
bring their cans and their bottles in, and they pay for it. So if you don't return it, you are paying an extra 10 cents or 20 cents for it. So per can. So if you get a six pack, you're paying 60 cents extra. So it's enough to be an annoyance, but it's not enough to, people do it. They just naturally do it. They don't think anything of it. I think if they stop charging, people would still do it at
Yeah.
this point. But yeah, every process has its pros and cons. With aluminum, the rate of what is actually being recycled is much lower than people think. Yes, it can be infinitely recycled. However, look up
Yeah.
the numbers and see what it really looks like.
Well, and again, tying in, and we can wrap it up here, but tying up the conversation with sustainability and supply chain is like, I think the aluminum can allocation problem is a perfect example of that. So
Mhm.
if you weren't here at the beginning, Ball Corporation, I believe it was Ball, it might have been others, announced a price increase per can, and then a giant, like a 5x raise in MOQ. So if you were used to buying a truckload of cans, you now had to buy 5 truckloads of cans. And so what that meant is that there was this whole secondary market for bright stock cans. So if you're a distributor, you just buy 5 truckloads of bright stock cans, and then you can sell those off to companies who need them. Well, they're not printed any longer. They got to be decorated. So you got to put a film pressure sensitive label on it made out of polypropylene, which is not great in the aluminum recycling process because it
Mhm.
gets gunked up along with shrink sleeves. So you're putting a shrink sleeve, you're putting a label on a lot more of these cans, not because the brands are wicked and evil and bad, but because it's their only option. And that's causing problems downstream in the recycling. And so these topics, the material allocation and supply chain topic and sustainability, are really closely linked, and it's why I try to highlight these things when I can, when it's coming up, when it's timely. For brands who might be listening to this, I highly encourage you to you have to, if you're buying labels and paperboard and aluminum products right now, you absolutely, if you haven't already, have to be digging in with your current suppliers and be willing to look at secondary, tertiary, and whatever the fourth level, courtier. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever that
Yeah,
number is,
we
right?
know what you're talking about. Yeah.
You gotta have
We have to.
options. You gotta diversify
have
your
to.
options right now. And be willing to look at some different things. It's going to be a short-term price increase because you have to diversify, but in the long term, you're going to keep your lines running. You're going to keep your employees at least, employed. You're going to keep your products on the shelf, and you can't have that happen. You don't want the negative side of that to happen, right? Like where you're shutting down production lines, your product's not on the shelf.
Now you
Because
have even more supply chain issues
you got a
because
massive supply chain issue.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yep.
really encourage brands to do that. Mohammed, you asked a question here. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, but I'm from Colorado, home of the Denver Nuggets, playoff bound,
Here he
and
goes again.
hopefully
Yes.
two-time MVP Nikola Jokic.
Good luck.
Hey, Camille, why don't you put a bow on this thing? How can people get more of you and what you're doing in Indigo Packaging?
Sure. So you can email me at Camille, Camille, at indigopkg.com. That's my email. Again, Camille at indigopkg.com. Or you can go to my website, which is indigopkg.com. So, look me up, reach out if you have a question, you're working on a project. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to help you because I've worked in a lot of different industries. So, at the very least, I can answer your questions. But this is great, Adam.
Yeah, and I apologize once again for the audio and video hiccups. We're not professional media people, Camille and I. We are
Adam's close. Adam's close to it.
I'm doing my best over here, but Camille is just a treasure trove of information. She's a great human being, and encourage everyone to look out. Dustin asked to reiterate the timeline when we can expect the supply to run out. Pressure sensitive labels. The strike is still going on in Finland for paper liners. We're looking at a potentially 90 days. And so you've got some time, but it's not a lot to make sure that you qualify some alternative liners and materials for labels. There are also allocation issues on paper and other materials.
Pretty much everything.
Pretty much everything. Yeah. You're so welcome, Dustin. Thank you everyone who stuck with us through this non-video live event. But I'll post it up so that everyone can watch it if you'd like to, mostly to see my Nuggets love, but and also Camille's awesome background and our beautiful indigo-ish background that we have and a scrolling ticker. I went all out.
Yes.
Thanks so much, StreamYard.
It looks awesome. So when the people watch it, they will be impressed.
Oh
I'm
man,
impressed.
they're gonna love it. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks Camille for jumping on. Appreciate it. Thanks for sticking with us, and we'll stay in touch for sure.
Definitely. All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, bye.
Bye everyone.